Hey, good morning. Hi, everyone. How are you? This is Sophia, your host for today. And today I will be speaking on how do you deal with grief, especially in this season. There are so many who are navigating grief, loss, the pain, and the journey of what that may look like. And so I wanted to just share with you briefly as it relates to I've been noticing a lot of my clients have been navigating grief, especially during this season. And so, with that, I wanted to just highlight that it's okay and for you to be able to normalize, losing someone. Losing someone is not easy. And so, what is grief? My description here is that grief is an intense emotion, and it's the mental anguish that someone deals with when they are going through a season of grief. Now, mind you, as there's so many ways that individuals navigate grief, no two individuals, go through grief the same way. There are different ways in which people go through the journey, the healing journey of grief itself. And so I wanted to just pinpoint as well that grief affects an individual physically, psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually. So, for a second, let's look at how an individual may look at grief through the lens of their spirituality. So, Psalm 23 describes grief as the valley of the shadow of death. Grief is painful. And with that said, grief lingers for many people. According to research, you may even have a different perspective in terms of the different stages of grief. And grief is a healthy way for, I would say, a healthy response to losing someone. It is actually estimated that 13 million people will go through grief. 13 million people in America, at least, grieve a death. And so that's where we normalize that. And grief, in spite of, how we may look through the lens of what grief may look like, I want to also say that there is something we normalize and we call complex grief. So the complex grief means that someone will go through what they're feeling, actually their thoughts, their mindset may be punctuated by this complex grief. So if you grieve someone and you haven't really addressed what that may look like for you, it persists. And now, according to the DSM, there is also prolonged grief, and that may last for adults a long time, right? As opposed to how it may last for a child. And so, if we're looking at that, we want to be able to normalize if we're walking alongside someone who is grieving. We want to be able to, yes, it's okay to show empathy as well. And here's one thing I notice quite often is that someone may say, well, I really don't know how to come alongside someone who's grieving. It doesn't mean that you have to fill that space with a lot of, you know, words. Just simply being still in that moment. Just be present, just be present, show up and just be present. That's okay. I think there's no unique way in which you can actually walk alongside someone, but just showing up, that's you being able to normalize that you're there for that person and it's okay. And so I want to also look at this idea of the stages of grief and what that may appear to be like for you. So grief, again, can be experienced in different ways, but specifically, according to Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, there are stages of grief. And so denial may not be, someone's first stage. Again, I said there's no one size that fits all. So denial and shock, and that may look like having a difficult time comprehending losing your loved one. And the pain can be intense. And so it may not be a reality for you in this stage of denial. Anger and blame, this loss, as soon as this loss begins to really set in, you may wonder in terms of being occupied, or I should say preoccupied, overwhelmed with memories of losing this loved one or a friend. What about bargaining? And so in this space, bargaining could maybe perhaps look like, you're trying to negotiate then with God in this difficult time. So that's what bargaining looks like. Depression, we see that a lot in our clinical space. Depression, this overwhelming, intense pain. You feel this during this phase of depression. Perhaps you're not able to go back to your normal routine. Before experiencing the loss, this emotional pain is overwhelming, I would say. And so you perhaps may not look like you're able to perceive life as it was before the loss. Acceptance. So in this space, the pain, as I said, is intense, and perhaps you're not able to, reconnect with others in your environment, with friends, socially, emotionally, spiritually. And here again, in the acceptance, this is where you're able to, before the bargaining, before the denial, the anger, the anguish, in the acceptance space, you're now able to express verbally how you're feeling emotionally. So you're able to address, yes, I am hurting. Yes, I'm going through this difficult time of pain and loss. And you're able to verbalize and to also put a language to it, to name what you're experiencing. So this is where the acceptance stage of your grief, it is where healing looks very possible for individuals in this space. And so here again, I want to say that perhaps it's not where you may normalize in terms of things are back to normal, because you can be triggered when it comes to grief, right? And so even after a loss, yes, it is a change, but also I want to pinpoint, you're looking at a new normal, right? Remember when everyone encountered COVID, and it was a new norm for everyone. A new normal in terms of technology. We were on Zoom a lot. We were Zooming a lot of the days. And so isolating with your families or friends, wearing your mask, that was the new norm. So I want to say that when you're grieving as well, there is a new norm where you're adapting to, the change. You no longer have your loved one or friend in your space, so to speak. And so now, okay, perhaps a lot of times we see clients go through this in various ways that they consider to be helpful. A lot of our clients journal, and not only that, they, practice different ways to remember their loved ones. Perhaps they're able to make or prepare a dish that their loved ones loved, and this is a way for them to keep that memory going. They would create scrapbooks with different ways to memorialize their loved ones. There's so many different ways to keep the memories going, right? And so that's important for them. And again, I want to say there's no timeline for grief, but it becomes very concerning if someone is grieving for an extended amount of time and they don't seem to be getting you know anywhere in terms of their healing journey, trying to make sense of losing their loved ones. And so that may look different again for everyone. But I want to say that grief is a process. But here it is that grieving is, again, not getting everything back to normal, but the goal is to find a new normal that is useful for you. And one of the ways that I want to also say that on a scale of 1 to 10, if you're able to look at, okay, so maybe on a scale of 1 to 10, you're at a 5, and what would it take for you to be at a 7? What is the exception there? And that, again, I want to highlight. Many of our clients consider that to be a useful way for them to look at their own process. Again, your healing is personal. Your journey, navigating grief is personal. And so I wanted to say that as well. So here are some of the questions that I normally, ask my clients to tell me a little bit about the relationship that you had with this loved one. How close were you? When was the last time that you were able to, lead into the space of what you're navigating so that your healing journey can be as unique to you as you consider it to be? What are some of the good times that you shared with this loved one? And so this is also a way for us to build the rapport, build that therapeutic alliance. But outside of that, it's also a way for my clients to explore, right? What that looks like for them. What is the relationship with the grief? And so, how are they functioning right now? I want to be able to normalize that as well. What were some of the best times that you had with this individual? That's important. So, normalizing how clients are actually going through their grief journey, that's going to be important for my clients to be able to see where they are. But theoretically, I want to also say that the process of grief has been understood here as individuals who are in that bereavement, they're grieving for their loved ones. And you may also come across the attachment, the theoretical space of Bowlby's attachment and what that looks like for everyone. So the platitudes of someone saying, oh, by now you should have gotten over that, that's not really useful for individuals who are grieving. So I wanted to pinpoint that as well in terms of where people are, meeting people where they are. That's going to be very important. And so I just wanted to highlight the different stages of grief, what that looks like for everyone, being able to normalize where you are, if you're able to find meaning, if you're able to put a language to the grief. But I want to be able to say that, the platitudes of telling someone about the silver lining, a lot of times that's not helpful. So depending on where you are in your grief process, I want to, be able to say grief is a journey. It's a process. It's not something that should be rushed to get over it. And grief is not simply losing someone. You may have lost a job. That is grief, right? And so being able to normalize where you are, what was, what could be, and what it may look like in the future. That's a part of that traumatic experience. It also shows up as how you're able to deal with the grief and different triggers that may come along in that space for you, different patterns that you may have noticed as well. That's going to be important for you to be able to normalize that. A lot of time, even as women, you may have lost friendship. That's a grief. So you perhaps have to look at the times where you were able to be together with your friends, right? And the good times you may have had together as friends, the laughter that you have shared together, the dreams that you have shared together, relationship as well. That's another loss. So you have to actually look at the different stages of those loss. And I want to also say a lot of times we spend perhaps what I've noticed in the clinical space, that it's helpful for individuals to look at the total picture in terms of holistic well-being and not so much of what didn't go right in the relationship, but also take alongside and not compartmentalize it so that you can heal holistically. So again, that's going to look different for everyone. So today, I hope you have a takeaway that you don't have to grieve the way that other people expect you to grieve. You don't have to rush the way that your emotions show up for you. But I would say normalize where you are, find a new norm as you navigate your grief uniquely, and to be able to adjust to not having that friend or not having the loved ones with you. Find a way that you can cope realistically with the loss that you are experiencing. And it's okay to not be okay and to know that you're not alone. I would say find a good support system, a safe space where you can process your grief. And if you are not able to identify any of that, I would say consider therapy as well, where you are in a space with your therapist. It's a safe space. You're not judged. You're not rushed. Your therapist will be able to hold space for you so you can normalize what that looks like for you as you adjust in your time of grief. So again, I just wanted to pinpoint that real quick. Hope something resonated with you. And I hope that you will continue to tune in to this podcast. Like, share, subscribe, guys. Leave a comment below and let us know, what other topics you would love for us to share here. This is a sisterhood space. And yes, there may have been one or two men who have stopped by and subscribed. I want to say we appreciate you so much. Share this information with your friends, your loved ones. And until the next podcast, be safe, guys. Take care and be well. We care about your wellness journey because it is good when you're able to heal and be that whole person that you desire to be. So take care again until the next podcast.